Signato with Real Progressives. Tonight, our guest is Hermon Farahi. He's running for Congress in Nevada's 3rd Congressional District. Hermon, thanks for being with us this evening. I know you've been on the show before, so if people, think he's familiar. I think Joy has interviewed him a few weeks ago. And I'm sure he'll be on, a few more times before the primary later in June. So, Hermon, can you just talk to us a little bit about your background, what inspired you to run for Congress, and just a little bit about your campaign?
Sure. Yeah. So my background: I am a first-generation American, born and raised in the U.S., and I'm proudly raised in an immigrant family. My mother came from South Korea, my father from Iran. I don't know how they met, but somehow they did, and this is probably the only country in which that could have been possible, and I'm thankful for that. But we're in a situation today, too, where I don't know if that would have been possible had my mother and father come to this country today, as opposed to the 1970s. So we got a lot of work to do to reclaim all those American ideals that we hold so closely. The ideals of tolerance, diversity, equality. We're fighting existential battle to reclaim that as part of our core American values. And, so that's kind of my background, and that's imbued everything that how I live and walk into this world. My background is I was educated as a cultural anthropologist, and I did international development studies. So I have a background in international politics. I'm also a documentary filmmaker. And that is all with the intention of giving voice to disenfranchised and marginalized communities through the power of storytelling. And in doing storytelling and doing film work, it's constantly about active listening and informed context on the issues and giving voice. And that's exactly what my campaign is all about, too. Actively listening to the needs of our constituents, giving voice to those issues, and then effectively acting to create those policies that will benefit the vast majority of Americans.
And when I first came across you, it was for a story I wrote a couple of weeks ago. The Intercept put up a similar story today, where the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee they're backing candidates long before the primary, and in your district, Susie Lee, who strangely ran in the 4th Congressional District just last year, is getting backed by the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. So can you talk a little bit about that? What's been your experience with the DCC? And what was your reaction when you first found out that the Democratic Party was basically trying to anoint a candidate? And what was your campaign's reaction, and how is your campaign reacting toward that?
Well, I think one place to start is by looking at how the corrupting influence of big money in politics has so many different faces, right? It reaches out into different corners of our political life, and one of those ways is by the anointing, as you said, of candidates that are independently wealthy, that have corporate friendly policies. In this case, Susie Lee, I believe up to now, has not even published a platform, so no one actually knows what her policies are. And also obviously this is kind of another way in which that's taking place. And we're in a situation today where, we're literally, as progressives, we are fighting for the heart and soul of the Democratic Party. And, the establishment is doing everything that it can to tip the scales in their favor. And that's not right. That's undemocratic. And so we got to live up to our name. If we're going to be Democrats, we got to be democratic in our primaries. And right now, we're supposed to be acting impartially as a party in the primary process. When the DCCC gets involved and endorses their particular candidates that they pre-anointed so early in the primary process, that obviously shows that the Democratic Party establishment is not necessarily reaching out to progressives. Even when the voters, Democrats Democrats, by and large, voters are with progressives on the issues. And in this case, too, when the DCCC comes in at such an early phase, they're not allowing the voice of the voters to shine through. And by doing things like this, tipping the scales in their favor, they're trying all over the country, not just in my district. Obviously, this is one of the core districts in the balance of power in Congress, and it's a swing district. But all across the country, as your report showed so vividly, is they're taking the same tact across the country. And so there's candidates like myself that are pushing back in all the ways that we can. One of the ways, too, is by doing the work of building people power in the campaigns and being able to run a grassroots campaign that's really engaging and speaking to voters on the issues. And we know we have the correct platform in terms of the issues that will resonate with people. And I think voters need the opportunity to hear that message and to be able to cast their ballot without top-down, national level influencing.
And how is your campaign characterizing the differences between your candidacy and not only Susie Lee's, but the other Democratic primary opponents that you're facing?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the big things here is that as a person of color, as a person of Iranian American and Korean American descent, one of the big things that I'm trying to do too is advocate for a very strong diplomacy-first approach to foreign policy. And this is particularly at a time when both of these regions of the world are under the crosshairs of the Trump administration, who's just actively escalating the potential for military conflict in both regions. And, we are already engaged in multiple conflicts to this day, these protracted wars that seem like they're endless in scale. We can't be getting into another conflict, much less a potentially nuclear conflict. So that's a big part of what I'm trying to do too, is create more representation for those diasporas that are not represented in U.S. Congress.
And, Jackie Rosen is the congressional representative in your district now. She's running for Senate. But what, if anything, would you do differently? How would you represent the district differently than Rosen has? And if you have any criticisms of her, or what good has she done that you would also like to emulate?
Well, I think there's definitely need for strong progressive Democrats to represent the 3rd District in Nevada. And, we've had candidates are more or less pretty central on all their positions and pretty mainstream. And we're at a time right now, we're at a critical junction in our history as a nation, right? We have so many mounting challenges. We have issues of, racial justice issues, social justice, economic justice, ecological justice issues that if we do not vehemently and unabashedly address these with the true leadership that's required to overcome these crises, we may be leaving a place for our children that may not be that great to live in. So, we have an imperative to act right now to really push an agenda that's people first, that's not profits first, which a majority of our congressional representatives tend to represent because they follow the interests of their corporate donors, more or less. And so, I think another thing too is making sure that our constituent services here in Nevada are really connected with the people. And instead of, the typical politician, everyone sees it, they're responsive. If there's an issue, then they might come out and do a town hall. If it's something that they have to do because there's people out with picket signs and everything outside. I want to create constituent services that's actually like grounded in the community and staff it up with community organizers, with people who have intimate connections with their communities. And then that way you can have a streamlined relationship, both in two streets, right? Both in terms of the community speaking up to the representative, in this case, hopefully me. And then also for me to be able then to speak to my community and mobilize that community when needs be based on a certain policy that we need to push that our community really wants to get passed. Then we can do that grassroots movement and actually build power on the grassroots to push those policies forward.
And, in the 2016 primaries, most people know Nevada because, not only was it a battleground state between Sanders and Clinton, but there were a ton of issues, not only during the caucuses themselves, but during the Nevada Democratic Party state convention. So, in your experiences, what were some of the issues that you think that the party needs to work on so that those things don't happen again in 2020? With the DNC Unity Reform Commission, Sanders and Clinton supporters were debating on whether to get rid of caucuses altogether or, how to fix them, how to improve them. So how would you, what kind of issues did you find with the process, and how would you like to see that fixed?
Well, you pointed to some very traumatic experiences for a lot of progressive Democrats here in Nevada, and we're still trying to heal from that and trying to create a situation where we're inclusive and we're together in this effort to stop this right-wing takeover of our government, to stop the xenophobia that's run rampant, to stop the corporate buyout of our government that's rampant. We have common issues that we need to address. So healing from 2016, it takes some time. I think part of it is focusing not on the personalities of 2016, speaking specifically to the candidates of 2016 in the primary, but speaking to the issues. And, Democrats, by and large, agree on the issues. We agree that we need universal health care. We agree that we need accessible and affordable higher education. We want to get big money out of politics. There's so many issues that we united on. Now, we have a challenge because the structures of power of the Democratic Party that have been connected more so with corporate donors over the last several decades, there needs to be a shift to making sure that we have a government of, by, and for the people again, and a Democratic Party representing the people. But insofar as you have, as you mentioned, the DCCC endorsing candidates across the country, as we have situations like in my own district, this is kind of a microcosm of the issues of the Democratic Party at the national scale, where you have a pre-anointed candidate that's independently wealthy, that's tied to the corporate interests, that has not published a platform, where, these are the same issues that we faced in 2016. How do we overcome these? We have to keep doing what we're doing, and we have to push for open primaries. We have a closed primary here in Nevada, so it's not open to independents. We need to make it open to independents because then we'll have the supermajority and be able to take both houses of Congress. We need to be able to have impartial primaries, right, and have voters actually hear the candidates without the bias of the national party coming down. So there's ways to overcome this, and I think focusing on the issues again is the key, because that's where people will resonate with these issues. And as progressives, we know that we have the issues that people will resonate with. So it's just a matter of getting out there, and that's what my campaign's doing, just getting out there, phone banking, knocking on doors, getting a volunteer army ready to mobilize and hit the streets. And that's how we're going to win elections. Bernie Sanders showed us that, money itself is not the only variable in this. It's also the message and reaching out to people and speaking to people on the issues. And that's exactly what I'm going to do.
And, I think it was like last week or a couple weeks ago, the Nevada Democratic Party chair unveiled a mascot, Mitch McTurtle, that was made fun of all over Twitter. And it was pretty embarrassing to see, a state party unveil like a kid's mascot like that. So, what were your thoughts when you saw that? And when stuff like that happens, how do you recover from being affiliated with that? Because, in my opinion, at least, that turns off voters and it makes the party look like a joke. And when you're trying to focus on the issues, it really, undermines the message and just basically your authority to really convey those issues.
Right. Our reaction immediately was kind of just to laugh it off, and really, it's a laughable thing. For one, it's not only silly, but it's also not right. I think we need to we need to remember what Michelle Obama said in regards to, when they go low, we go high, right? And these types of, essentially what this is we're characterizing individuals' particular features or characteristics into something that is a parody. And that's actually something that's in the Nevada State Democratic Party charter. That's in the anti-bullying clause, where that shouldn't be taking place. Like, you can't pick out the characteristics of an individual and turn it into a spoof, because that's not cool. And I'm not the biggest fan of Mitch McConnell and his policies and his way of his leadership style, but I wouldn't go about making a mockery of his characteristics either. I think those types of ad hominem arguments are both, as you say, they dissuade a lot of potential people that you can win over to your side, and it's not the leadership we need today, right? We need to be talking about the issues. So maybe if that turtle was going out and talking about Medicare for all, a living wage, ending big money in politics, and in a way that's not laughable, then perhaps. But in the current format, it's just a laughing matter at this point.
And running as a congressional candidate, how will you help to fight against some of the battles that are ongoing in Nevada? I know there's been a nuclear test dump site that's been a center of controversy for at least the past decade. Yeah. So how do you intend to focus on those issues that are statewide and might not necessarily impact your district directly, but are definitely hot issues that people care about throughout the state?
Yeah, I mean, this issue of nuclear waste again goes back to our energy infrastructure and the fact that today we desperately need to move away from fossil fuels and usher in a new era of a Green New Deal. And being in Southern Nevada, we have the opportunity to do that in an impactful way because we have so much solar and wind here. And if we had the leadership, and also if we had the independence from the interests of the fossil fuel industries, right, and getting away from the donor models that tie us into that industry, we can actively and quickly advance into renewable energies and get away from any of the side effects of things like nuclear energy. And we can fully, just close the issue, Yucca Mountain. And another big issue too, when it comes to natural resources, is the fact that so much of the lands, the federal lands in Nevada, are basically being opened up for resource exploitation by the Trump administration. We have national parks, historic monuments that are losing their designations as such because the Trump administration wants to open it up for extractive industries. So you have Basin Range and Gold Butte and Bears Ears. These are all things that we need to stand up firmly and protect here in Nevada and across the country. I mean, these are our landmarks. These are the natural landscapes that we leave our generations behind. We cannot open it up to mineral extraction and nuclear waste dump sites. This is not the way to treat the environment, especially at a time when we're seeing climate change becoming such an issue. We're having, it's already almost 80 degrees in Nevada in January at times here. And we're seeing the biggest, just in our backyard, the biggest fires, the Thomas fires in California. That's now turning into mudslides, And so we have to have leadership that's going to push back against the fossil fuel industry and usher in a new Green Deal that can transform our energy infrastructure, that can create the jobs of the future that we need as well.
And what do you think went wrong a couple of years ago? You had Elon Musk's solar company battling it out with the utility companies backed by Warren Buffett, and the utility companies basically made it too expensive to really spread solar in Nevada. policy-wise, and what were some of the political failures where that fight was lost to the utility companies and the fossil fuel industry that profits from keeping things the way they are, the status quo?
Yeah, so that was a big issue because so many folks were really excited about rooftop solar, residential rooftop solar, and the program started to develop, and then there was a clean slate, and the Public Utilities Commission decided to work against that, and it made business as an energy company, as a renewable energy company, very difficult in Nevada. That's since changed a little bit. So the Public Utilities Commission has moved towards creating a situation where renewable energy companies can come back in and can restart the move for rooftop solar, which is a good sign. But we also need that leadership on the national level. We can do things at the city level, like New York did recently. Mayor de Blasio recently created basically a lawsuit against the fossil fuel industry, trying to usher in that new era of a clean city, of a clean powered city. We can do that on municipal levels, and we must. We can do that on state levels, and we must. But to really do it at scale, we need to be talking about it on the national level. We need to be creating energy infrastructure projects on the national level to be able to actually put a dent into lowering our CO2 footprint and lowering our carbon footprint, which we know we are playing with fire right now. We're so close to those tipping points. All the environmental scientists are telling us. And I just saw at Sundance Film Festival, there's a new documentary on Kiribati, the small island nation in Micronesia, they may be underwater in the next generation. So we have to act now, and we need that leadership on all levels. And I hope to bring that leadership into the federal level as well through my congressional race.
And before we go, is there anything else you would like people to know about your campaign or the issues you're trying to elevate through your campaign?
Sure. Yeah. I'll share with you a personal story. Obviously I was inspired by this progressive wave that we saw from 2016 and the need to reclaim our Congress and reclaim our government from the hands of right-wing xenophobes and from, these corporate interests that are buying out our representatives. These are huge issues that we're facing. And it came to a point where personally, I shortly before the Muslim ban came out, as an Iranian American, I had lost my father as well. And so it was a very, very difficult time in my life. And when that policy came out, it was such an insult to injury. It was like rubbing salt into your wounds. And it was that moment that I realized that, it's not just myself and my own family that's affected by that, because essentially what it did, it made it such that my family and relatives in Iran couldn't even come to the U.S. to pay their respects to my father. And so that hurt deeply personally. And then I realized there's millions of people. You have 800,000 dreamers out there right now with no knowledge of what their future is going to look like. You have so many immigrant communities out there that are under threat today, people of color that are facing challenges that are amplified by this administration. So there is so much that we have to do to rectify these issues. And I told myself too, the work I had been doing in terms of my social research, my policy analysis, my documentary filmmaking, my community organizing, was that enough? I asked myself that. And I realized that, no, I need to take the next step and I need to actually advocate for these policy changes that we need crucially today to really move forward together in a way that's inclusive, in a way that is going to solve so many of these issues that are coming to a head today. And so that's exactly why I'm doing this. I want to give voice to the people. I want to reclaim our government for the people as opposed to the corporate interests. And that means pushing things like universal health care, Medicare for all, a living wage, making sure we have Wall Street regulation, making sure that corporations pay their fair share in taxes, getting big money out of politics. I mean, these are all issues that I'm committed to fighting. And I don't believe you're going to find a stronger advocate for these policies than myself. So I would urge your viewers to follow me. You can look at our online media at hermonforthepeople.com. That's our website, HERMON forthepeople.com. And you can also check us out on social media at Hermon #4, the people.
All right, for everyone watching, I'm going to post that in the comments. So check it out. Follow him on social media. Hermon, it was a pleasure meeting you, and I hope to have you on again soon in the within the next couple of months. And thank you everyone for watching. Thanks again, Hermon.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me.
No, our pleasure. Good night, everyone.
Good night.